My name is Ava Turner, and I'm 25 years old. I still remember the smell of cinnamon and vanilla filling every corner of our little home bakery. The scent would wrap itself around you like a warm hug the moment you stepped inside. It's been 4 years since I lost my mom, Helena, to cancer, but the memories of her warmth, her strength, and the quiet way she ran her world with grace live on in everything I do. My mother wasn't just a chef. She was an artist with flour and sugar. She didn't just bake bread or decorate cupcakes. She told stories with her hands, infused every batch with love, and created joy that people could taste. She built her bakery from scratch, one cupcake and sourdough loaf at a time. She named it Sweet Haven. And for me, that place wasn't just her business. It was home. It was where she taught me to measure with my heart, and not just with spoons, where we whispered secrets over cake batter, and where I watched her pour love into everything she made. Sweet Haven was more than a bakery. It was our rhythm, our heartbeat. We lived in the little house attached behind the kitchen, and I would often wake to the sound of mixers whirring and the soft hum of Mom singing along to her favorite jazz records. On weekends, I'd help her knead dough, decorate cookies, and fold bakery boxes. She always made it feel like a game, like I was part of something important, something magical. When she died, it felt like the air had been punched out of my lungs. One moment, she was here, strong and smiling through the pain, and the next, she was gone. I wasn't ready for that kind of goodbye. No one ever is. But in true Helena fashion, she had already thought ahead. She left everything to me: our house, the bakery, and her handwritten cookbook filled with decades of recipes, notes, and tiny hearts drawn beside her favorites. I clung to them like lifelines, not sure how to move forward, but determined not to let her legacy fade. My father, Daniel, had been out of our lives for years. He walked out when I was 10. I still remember that night. The sound of the front door closing, the rain hitting the windows, and Mom sitting silently at the kitchen table after he left. He eventually remarried a woman named Brooke, and they had a daughter together, Lily. We barely spoke during my teenage years. He'd send a holiday card sometimes, maybe a birthday text, but that was it. I had long since stopped expecting him to show up. So when he appeared at Mom's funeral, I was stunned. He stood awkwardly near the coffee table in the bakery kitchen, looking out of place in a suit that didn't quite fit. Brooke stood beside him, her expression unreadable. Lily clung to her hand, wide-eyed and quiet.
I didn't know what to say.
"We'd like to help," he said that day, his voice echoing in the kitchen that had once belonged entirely to Mom. "You're going to college soon. Let's stay here and keep things running while you focus on school." At the time, it sounded like a kind gesture. I was emotionally drained, grieving, and overwhelmed by the weight of decisions I didn't feel prepared to make. And part of me, the lonely part, the daughter who still wished her father had never left, wanted to believe he was finally trying to make amends. I agreed. I figured it would have made Mom happy to see us trying to be a family, even if it looked different now. So I packed my things and left for school, heart heavy but quietly hopeful. I enrolled in the University of Oregon to study fine arts, a path Mom had always encouraged. "Creativity is your magic," she used to say, brushing a smear of frosting from my cheek. "Use it well." I threw myself into my classes, painting late into the night, and walking through galleries that made me feel close to her. During those first semesters, I would come back during breaks and holidays. Each time, the house looked a little different. Brooke had reorganized the pantry and added new curtains to the windows. Lily's crayon drawings covered the fridge, and my father had taken to fixing things: squeaky doors, chipped paint, the leaky faucet Mom always meant to get around to. For a while, I let myself believe this could work. Brooke was surprisingly warm. She'd offer to help with baking when I was home, even if she had no idea what she was doing. "I'll do the dishes," she'd say with a grin, waving me off with sudsy hands. She'd chat with me over coffee, ask about my professors, and compliment my sketches. Lily was a bright, bubbly presence who followed me everywhere. We'd bake sugar cookies together, get flour in our hair, and fall asleep on the couch watching animated movies. My father began to soften, too. He'd sit with me at the kitchen table and listen when I talked about school. He cried once when I showed him a portrait I had painted of Mom. She was one of a kind, he whispered, eyes glassy. The changes were slow but real. I started to feel like maybe, just maybe, we were building something again. Not a replacement for what I lost, but a new kind of foundation. One where love wasn't perfect, but was trying its best to show up. When I graduated, it felt like I had finally made it through the storm. I had my degree, a job offer at a small design studio just 30 minutes from home, and a heart full of dreams. More than anything, I wanted to return to Sweet Haven, to breathe life back into the place that had raised me. I imagined myself waking up early to bake, designing logos and murals in the afternoons, and falling asleep each night in the room where Mom used to read me bedtime stories. But when I pulled up to the front gate, everything felt off. The garden, once full of herbs and wildflowers, looked oddly manicured. There was a shiny new fence where there used to be an open walkway. And the welcome mat, Mom's old faded one that said Flower Power, was gone. In its place was something generic from a department store. Still, I smiled, thinking maybe they had just wanted to spruce things up. I walked up the steps, dragging my suitcase behind me, and reached into my bag for the key. The same key I had used my entire life. It didn't fit. Confused, I tried again. Nothing. That's when I noticed the lock was different, new and shiny, completely unfamiliar. My heart sank. I knocked, anxiety fluttering in my chest. A few minutes later, the door opened. Brooke stood there, her hair perfectly styled, a mug of tea in her hand. She blinked at me like she hadn't expected to see me.
Ava.
Her voice carried surprise, but it wasn't warm. It was guarded, like I had caught her in the middle of something. Yeah, I'm home, I said, forcing a smile, even as my stomach churned. She didn't step aside. You should have called. That was the first sting. Not a hug. Not a welcome home. Just a cold sentence that immediately made me feel like I didn't belong. I didn't think I needed to. This is still my house. There was a long pause. Then, let me get Daniel. I stood there on the porch, shivering in the evening air, the weight of my suitcase pulling at my arm, and the weight of betrayal starting to settle in my chest. The home I had trusted them with now felt like someone else's. And I had no idea what kind of welcome, or truth, was waiting behind that door. When my dad appeared, his expression shifted from pleasant to panicked in a heartbeat. His eyes flicked to Brooke, who hovered behind him, arms crossed, watching the scene unfold like it was an inconvenience rather than a confrontation. Why are the locks changed? I asked softly, though my voice trembled just enough to betray the knot forming in my throat. He ran a hand through his thinning hair, avoiding my gaze. There's something I need to explain, he said quietly. He stepped aside and gestured for me to come in. I hesitated for a second, then walked into what used to be our living room. Except it didn't feel like ours anymore. The layout was different. The old bookshelf Mom had stained by hand was gone, replaced by a sleek modern one filled with family board games and decorative knickknacks. The photos on the walls had changed too, no more pictures of Mom dusted in flour, laughing in the bakery. Instead, it was all glossy prints of Lily's dance recitals and sunny beach vacations. I perched on the edge of the couch, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. It felt like sitting in someone else's house. My dad stood in front of me, his face uncertain. I told Brooke the house belonged to me, he said after a long pause, still not looking at me directly. When we moved in, I didn't think you'd want it back. I thought it'd be easier if we just kept it like this. My breath caught. You lied, I whispered.
He winced.
I didn't mean for it to get this far. It just happened. Lily's school is nearby, and we've built a life here now. This place, it works for us. I stared at him, the man who used to twirl me around the kitchen, now asking me to understand a betrayal he dressed up as convenience. You can stay, of course, he added. Just be respectful. Respectful? Of what? The lie? The fact that they had taken over my mother's home and quietly erased her from every corner? But I swallowed my rage and nodded. I didn't have the energy to argue. Not yet. I was tired, confused, and maybe, somewhere deep down, still hoping we could make this work. that maybe the house could still hold something good.
So I tried.
I unpacked my suitcases and set them down in my old bedroom. The walls were a different color now, a soft lavender instead of the pale yellow Mom and I had painted together one summer. The cinnamon sugar scent I associated with this room was gone, replaced with store-bought air fresheners. I offered to help in the kitchen. I tried baking muffins, hoping the smell might wake something familiar. Every morning, I brewed coffee just the way Mom had, medium roast, splash of oat milk, a pinch of cinnamon on top. But it was never right. Brooke would smile at me with tight lips and cool eyes. "Oh, I usually make lattes now," she'd say, then casually dump the mug I had prepared down the sink when she thought I wasn't looking. Her movements were polite, but the message was clear. I didn't belong in this kitchen anymore. Lily, once eager to spend time with me, now barely acknowledged my presence. She stopped drawing pictures for the fridge. She started sitting farther away from me at dinner. She didn't say anything cruel, but her sudden silence spoke volumes. I had become a guest in her home. The hardest part, though, was my dad. He avoided being alone with me. If we ever found ourselves in the same room, conversations stayed shallow, weather updates, grocery lists, reminders to turn off the porch light.
He didn't ask about my job.
He didn't ask how I was feeling. He didn't even say, "Welcome home." The man who used to cheer at my art shows and frame my drawings in the hallway now only glanced up from his paper to say, "Can you keep it down?" Then one evening, I heard Brooke on the phone. Her voice floated out from the kitchen, just loud enough to carry into the hallway. "She's still here," she said. I thought she'd leave by now. "It's uncomfortable, and Lily's noticing." I stood frozen, back pressed against the wall, my hands balled into fists. I felt like a ghost. Unwanted. Intruding in a place I had been born into. That was the moment I stopped lying to myself. This wasn't my home anymore. Not to them. They had moved in with such ease. First changing the furniture, then the scent of the rooms, and finally the spirit of the house itself. They painted over the chalkboard wall where Mom and I used to jot down baking notes and new recipe ideas. They boxed up her cookbooks, those handwritten ones with flowers still dusted between the pages, and stashed them away in the attic like they were clutter. The kitchen no longer buzzed with joy. The hallway no longer echoed with humming. It was all gone. Each day, I tiptoed through rooms like I was trespassing. Brooke's smiles came laced with passive aggression. "You know," she said one morning while passing me the butter, "you'd probably feel more independent if you had your own space." She slid a real estate flyer across the table. A studio apartment is circled in red ink. Lily ignored me completely when I mentioned Mom. "I never met her," she said flatly. "She's not my grandma."
And Daniel?
He just kept disappearing. Into the garage. Into the garden. Into excuses. He had nothing to say. It was like living among ghosts. Some of them I missed. Some of them haunted me. Then one morning, I woke up and noticed the silence first. It was the kind of silence that felt clean.
Still.
Like the house had taken a breath. No Brooke clinking dishes. No Lily's footsteps overhead. No muffled conversations behind closed doors. Just nothing. I wandered through the house. Empty. Their shoes were gone. No keys in the bowl by the front door. Even the decorative beach photos were taken off the walls. Curious, I checked Brooke's Instagram. Sure enough, there it was, a photo of her and Lily in the Maldives, tan and smiling, captioned, "Maldives magic sparkles, yellow heart #family time." They were gone. On vacation. And they hadn't told me. I sat at the kitchen table, the one where I used to help Mom tie ribbons on bakery boxes, and stared at the steaming mug in my hands. I didn't sip it. My heart was pounding too hard. My thoughts raced. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed.
"Brooke."
I answered without thinking. "You're still in the house?" Her voice was sharp now, no longer pretending.
"Yes."
"It's my house," I said quietly but firmly. "Don't play dumb, Ava," she snapped. "We'll be back next weekend. I expect you to be gone by then. I'm tired of playing nice." And that was it. Something inside me shifted. I didn't cry.
I didn't beg.
I didn't try to defend myself. I just hung up the call and stood there, staring out the window at the patch of synthetic turf where my mother's rose bush used to bloom every spring. That evening, I wandered through each room slowly. I paused in the bakery kitchen, where I could still see Mom's handwriting faintly etched on a whiteboard corner. Try almond extract next time? I stepped into the hallway, where my childhood height was marked in pencil. Faded, but still there. This house wasn't theirs. It never had been. It was my mother's dream. Her legacy. And she had left it to me. I was done being erased from it. Done being quiet. Done being pushed aside. The home Brooke and Daniel built here was a lie. And I was ready to reclaim the truth. I called a moving service first thing the next morning. There was no hesitation, no second-guessing, just quiet determination. Every piece of furniture that wasn't part of the original home was cleared out. I walked from room to room, identifying what belonged and what didn't. If it hadn't been here before Brooke and Daniel moved in, it would have been packed. The plush, white couches Brooke brought in to replace Mom's vintage love seat?
Gone.
The oversized wall art that clashed with the quiet tones Mom always preferred?
Gone.
Monogrammed towels, gold-accented cutlery, and decorative vases that never matched the heart of the house. All boxed up neatly, labeled, and loaded. I didn't toss or damage a thing. I wanted no drama, no excuses. Every item was stored carefully in a rental unit under their name. Then I sent Daniel an email with the receipt and access code. I didn't include a note. I didn't need to. The silence said enough. After the last box was wheeled out, I called a locksmith. Watching the old lock come off and the new one slide into place felt symbolic, like sealing a wound, like drawing a boundary that could no longer be crossed. One turn of the key, and everything shifted. This house was mine again, not just legally, but emotionally, spiritually. It belonged to me, to my mother's memory, to the life we built before it was invaded and rearranged. 5 days later, they came back. It was early afternoon. The sun streamed in through the kitchen window, warming the worn tiles and dancing across the counter where I had Mom's cookbook open, a batch of cinnamon rolls baking in the oven. Her old apron, blue, frayed at the edges, was tied around my waist. The smell of cinnamon, sugar, and rising dough wrapped around me like armor. I felt strong. I felt rooted. The front door jiggled once, twice, and then stopped. A pause. Then a knock. Then pounding. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, walked to the door, and opened it slowly. There they stood, Brooke, fresh from the Maldives, with perfectly tousled beach hair and designer sunglasses pushed up on her head. Her skin was sun-kissed, her manicured hand perched on her hip, her mouth already twisting into a snarl. Behind her stood Daniel, slouched and silent, avoiding my eyes. And Lily, standing slightly behind them both, looked more confused than anything else. "What the hell did you do?" Brooke demanded, stepping forward like she had the right to storm into someone else's home. I didn't flinch. I didn't move. "Where's our stuff?" "It's been moved," I said calmly. "There's a receipt in Daniel's inbox." Her eyebrows shot up. "You can't do this. You don't have the right." I held up the folder in my hand. Inside was my mother's will, the house deed, and all the paperwork I had reviewed with a lawyer. "I do," I said simply. Brooke turned sharply to Daniel. Tell her she can't throw us out of your house." Daniel looked like a man crumbling under the weight of years of excuses. He shifted uncomfortably, finally meeting my eyes. His voice was barely audible. "She's right. It's hers." Brooke went still. For a moment, she didn't say anything, her mouth hanging open. Then, like a storm breaking over calm water, she exploded. "You lied to me. You let me think." "You made yourself believe it," I interrupted. "I let you stay because I was grieving. I let you walk over me because I wanted to believe we could be a family. But I won't let you stay one more day." Daniel didn't argue. He just nodded slowly, a quiet kind of resignation settling in his shoulders. "We'll go," he said, like he had known all along this moment would come. Brooke tried again, but this time her voice was laced with sugar, manipulative and familiar. "We could start over, Ava," she said, inching forward. We were getting closer. weren't we? The dinners, the movie nights. Lily loves having you around.
I shook my head gently.
No, I said softly. We were pretending, and I'm done pretending. The spell was broken. They gathered what little they had left, just a few bags and whatever hadn't been moved already, and left that evening. No slammed doors. No shouting. No apologies. Just the quiet shuffle of feet down the front steps. A defeated exit. An unwelcome farewell. That night, I sat alone in the living room, the old floral lamp casting a warm, golden glow. I curled up on the love seat, cradling a cup of tea, and for the first time in years, the silence felt peaceful. It was no longer cold or empty. It was mine. I could almost hear Mom humming in the kitchen. I could almost smell her perfume. The house was mine again. And this time I wasn't giving it up. The days that followed passed like a gentle breeze. At first, the quiet unnerved me. I kept expecting the sound of Lily's laughter or Brooke's passive-aggressive comments drifting from another room.
But they never came.
And slowly, that quiet stopped feeling like absence. It started to feel like presence, like peace. 2 days after they left, my phone buzzed. A text from my father.
I'm sorry.
The next day, can we talk? I didn't know how to fix it. And the day after that, I miss you. Please, let's talk. I read them all. I never responded. I didn't block him. I wanted him to see that I was reading his messages and still choosing silence. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. I no longer needed his validation. I had nothing left to say. I stopped checking social media. I stopped explaining myself to anyone. I stopped waiting for closure from people who never truly saw me. Instead, I poured my energy into reclaiming the home Mom built. I took down Brooke's abstract artwork and hung framed copies of Mom's handwritten recipes. I brought out the kitchen clock that always ran 5 minutes slow, the one we used to laugh about, and put it back above the pantry. I repainted the hallway in soft yellow, the same shade I had helped roll onto the walls as a child, giggling while Mom painted smiley faces between coats. The garden had been forgotten, choked with weeds and brown patches. I spent an entire weekend pulling weeds, planting basil, thyme, and rosemary, and digging up a special spot in the center of the yard. That's where I replanted the rose bush. Mom's favorite. The one Brooke ripped out to make room for patio furniture. I knelt in the dirt, pressed the roots down with care, and whispered, "You're home now." At work, something shifted too. The team at Marshall and Brooks had always been kind, but now they noticed something new. I was sharper, focused. I took the lead on our biggest branding redesign and saw my vision carried out with enthusiasm. I wasn't just present, I was powerful. Harper, one of the senior strategists, became an unexpected constant. She was brilliant, grounded, and had a laugh that made every room brighter. We started having lunch together, then late-night coffee chats, then spontaneous movie marathons in my living room with too much popcorn and not enough sleep. She never asked too much, never pushed. She just showed up. One night, as we sat on my porch under a sky full of stars, she said, "You know, you don't owe anyone a version of yourself that makes them comfortable." And I believed her. With her encouragement, I finally reopened the bakery. It took months, paperwork, cleaning, repainting, reimagining, but the day I turned the sign to open, something inside me settled. I renamed it Helena's Table, because that's what it had always been about: gathering, nourishing, celebrating. A place where second chances were served warm, alongside cinnamon rolls and chamomile tea. The locals returned slowly. Some remembered Mom. Some just loved the scent wafting from the oven. I added my flair, lavender scones, espresso cream cake, but I kept all of her originals, handwritten cards tucked safely in a binder behind the counter. Every morning, I walked into the bakery, tied Mom's apron around my waist, and opened the doors to a new beginning. I no longer needed validation from the people who tried to write me out of my own life. I had carved a place for myself. Each moment felt earned. Evenings were my favorite. I'd watch the sunlight stream through the windows and catch Harper dancing terribly while wiping down tables. I'd hum one of Mom's favorite jazz tunes while prepping dough for the next morning. And when everything went quiet, I'd step outside with a cup of tea and look at the rose bush, now blooming again, pink and defiant. I had lost so much, but I had rebuilt, piece by piece. I was Helena's daughter, not just by name, but in spirit. I had learned from her how to stay soft in a hard world, how to fight without raising my voice, how to reclaim without rage. And in the golden hush of dusk, standing by the window of a house finally filled with warmth again, I felt something I hadn't in years. I felt whole. I felt free. I felt at home.